I remember the day my grandfather died. The rain came down in slow, deliberate drops, as if the sky hesitated to let go. He left me $120,000. Money meant for college, for the future he wanted me to build. My father sat beside me 3 nights later, voice steady, eyes heavy with rehearsed sincerity. "The family business just needs a little help," he said. "It's temporary, Olivia. We'll pay it back before you even notice." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe in us. I signed the check with trembling hands. That single act rewrote everything that came after. Within 18 months, the company was gone. My inheritance disappeared with it. My father called it a market failure. I called it betrayal. He bought a new truck for my brother the same week he filed bankruptcy. I was left in a studio apartment that smelled like detergent and loneliness. $450 a month. No air conditioning, no space, no help. I worked mornings at a cafe, afternoons tutoring algebra, nights entering medical billing codes. Sleep became a rumor I only half remembered. The coffee stained my fingers, and the numbers blurred into one endless row. Once I called home during finals week. My mother answered, her laughter mixing with the sound of clinking glasses. They were hosting a barbecue. I asked if everything was okay. She said, "We're fine, sweetheart, are you?" I lied and said yes. That night, I cried so quietly the walls didn't hear. Every shift, every late-night class, every test felt like penance for being naive. I learned to live without expectation, to measure affection in invoices and silence. The world shrank to what I could afford, and even that felt borrowed. When friends asked about my family, I changed the subject. They couldn't understand how trust could vanish so cleanly, how it could leave no sound. I learned efficiency, precision, control. Emotions were luxuries, and I had none to spare. My landlord raised rent twice. I didn't complain. I just worked more hours, slept less, counted every coin like it was oxygen. I began to think maybe the universe was warning me. Don't rely on anyone. Don't believe promises spoken around dinner tables. Even so, I missed my grandfather's voice. He would have told me to keep studying, to keep building. So I did. I turned exhaustion into structure. I built a wall out of logic and numbers, a fortress no one could breach. Each bill I paid was a quiet rebellion. Each exam I passed was a victory they would never see. One night, I looked at my reflection in the dark window above my desk. My eyes were tired, but alive. The girl who once believed in family had vanished. The woman staring back was sharper, quieter, harder. She didn't wait for rescue. She became her own. I met Professor Miller in my 3rd year of college. He noticed the dark circles under my eyes before I said a word. "You're working too much," he said, sliding a paper back to me. "You're bright, but exhaustion will eat your brilliance alive." His tone wasn't pity. It was truth. He arranged an internship for me at a small tech firm downtown. The first week, I wrote code like it could save me. Maybe it did. The paycheck was small, but steady. I quit one of my 3 jobs. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. My supervisor, a woman named Clara, taught me discipline with kindness. "Don't rush your success," she said. "It's stronger when it grows slow." I learned how systems work, how people pretend, how numbers don't lie. I learned to see opportunity not as luck, but as evidence of effort. Every skill became a weapon I forged myself. Every line of code was a promise that I would never need them again. Graduation came sooner than I expected. The ceremony was bright, loud, full of strangers hugging each other. I kept scanning the crowd for familiar faces. 4 empty seats stared back at me. My mother had promised to come. She sent a text instead. "Jason's car broke down. We'll celebrate next week." There was no next week. I smiled for the photographer, diploma in hand, pretending it was enough. Later that night, I went home to my tiny apartment and opened a cheap bottle of wine. I drank to the silence, to the absence that no one else noticed. The next morning, I started my job at Nexus Data Systems. Entry level, minimal pay. But it was mine. I sat in a cubicle with beige walls and endless spreadsheets. And yet I felt free. Every project I finished erased another scar from the past. Every paycheck reminded me that survival could become stability. My boss, Robert, once said, "You're too serious for your age." I smiled. Seriousness was the only luxury I could afford. Months turned into years. Promotions came slowly, each earned through accuracy and silence. I learned how to read markets, predict losses, manage risk. Control became my comfort. I stopped calling home altogether. When the phone rang with their number, I let it die. Family, to me, had become a closed account. One night, I unlocked the drawer where I kept the old business contract. My father's signature beside mine. The ink had faded, but the wound was still fresh. I folded it carefully, placed it back, and whispered, "Never again." The world outside my window glittered with city lights. I didn't feel lonely. I felt alive. For the first time, I owed nothing to anyone. My success was not inherited. It was earned, one sleepless night at a time. And though I didn't know it yet, this peace would not last. The past always finds its way home. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my phone buzzed with her name. Mother. I almost ignored it. Habit told me silence was safer. But something in the timing made me answer. Her voice trembled, caught between guilt and performance. "Olivia, your father's heart isn't doing well," she said. "The stress, the bills, the house, everything's falling apart." I let the words hang, cold and deliberate. She continued, softer now. "The bank says we owe $280,000. We could lose the house." Her version of tragedy was always expensive. I said nothing. Only the sound of her sigh filled the space. When the call ended, I opened my laptop. Within minutes, county property records appeared on the screen. 5 equity loans. 3 refinances. A decade of reckless spending, disguised as survival. Every document carried my father's signature, bold and careless. He had turned our home into an ATM long before the bank did. That night, I sat in the glow of my desk lamp, tracing the numbers. Each debt was a confession they would never speak aloud. By midnight, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to save them. I was going to buy the house myself. Not as a daughter, but as the creditor they deserved. The next morning, I called Naomi Briggs. She was the attorney who once helped me with a contract dispute years ago. Her voice was sharp as ever. "What do you need, Olivia?" "I want to purchase a foreclosed property," I said. "The owners are family." She paused just long enough to understand. "Then we'll make sure it's done quietly." 2 weeks later, I sat in her office surrounded by glass and order. We reviewed bank statements, mortgage approvals, market valuations. Every page was a step toward justice disguised as business. When she handed me the pre-approval letter, my hands didn't shake. I signed every form with a precision I'd learned from pain. That night, I drove past the old neighborhood. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The paint peeled near the windows, the porch sagged with time. Inside, they were probably arguing about bills, about me. They had no idea the person who would soon own their home was watching from the street. I parked under the magnolia tree, its blossoms heavy with scent and memory. 15 years ago, I'd walked away from this place with nothing. Now I was coming back on my own terms. The deal closed 3 weeks later. Naomi placed a brass key in my palm. "It's official," she said. "The property is yours." I turned the key over in my hand, feeling its weight. It wasn't revenge. It was arithmetic. Numbers that finally balanced. I whispered, "Justice isn't loud, it just waits its turn." Outside, the evening sky burned gold, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. The video appeared online 2 days after the sale closed. My mother sat beneath the living room chandelier, tears glistening on cue. "She abandoned us," she cried into the camera. "After everything we gave her, she left us to lose our home." The comments came fast and cruel. People I hadn't spoken to in years called me heartless, ungrateful, selfish. "Family should come first," they wrote. None of them knew the math behind those tears. I stayed silent. Let them build their story. Truth doesn't need to shout to survive. That night, I signed the final mortgage transfer documents. The house was officially mine. The following morning, my lawyer Naomi called. "They'll receive the certified letter today," she said. "Are you ready for their reaction?" I exhaled. I've been ready for 15 years. By noon, my cousin texted me. They had opened the letter at the kitchen table. My mother fainted. My father turned pale. Jason punched the wall and then smoothed the paper flat again. The words were simple. Effective immediately. Olivia Ward is the legal owner of the property. I reread the message twice, then closed my laptop. Justice had its own quiet rhythm. The next afternoon, Naomi and I arrived at the house. I carried a folder. She carried calm professionalism. They were waiting in the dining room. My father looked older than I remembered. My mother's mascara had dried into gray shadows beneath her eyes. Jason stood behind them, jaw clenched, defiant but shaken. "Please sit," I said, motioning to the chairs. My father slammed his hand on the table. "You can't do this. We're your family." I met his eyes without blinking. "You taught me that family is business when money's involved." Naomi slid the rental agreement across the table. "Fair market rent is $1,800 per month," she said evenly. "Security deposit required. Payments due on the 1st. My mother gasped. "That's robbery." "It's standard," Naomi replied. "And slanderous social media posts will result in legal action." For once, my mother had no words. "You have 24 hours to decide," I said. "Sign the lease or vacate within 30 days. Jason stepped forward. "You'd really throw us out." "It's not your house anymore," I said quietly. "It's mine." My father's voice cracked. "We'll fight this. You'll regret it." "You're welcome to try," Naomi said, handing him her card. Their outrage slowly softened into disbelief. Then silence. The kind that follows a truth too heavy to deny. Finally, my father spoke, his voice small. "But we're family." I gathered my papers, stood, and looked around the room that once defined me. "Yes," I said. "And this is what family accountability looks like." I left them there, surrounded by the ghosts of their own choices. The door clicked shut behind me, final and clean. Outside, the air felt light, almost merciful. For the first time, justice had a heartbeat. They called a family, meeting the following Sunday. The invitation came through a cousin's text, laced with guilt and performance. "They just want to talk," she said. Talk was never innocent in my family. When I arrived, the living room was full. Aunts, uncles, old neighbors, even Pastor Raymond sat in a corner chair. My mother rushed toward me, arms open like a stage cue. "Olivia, sweetheart, everyone just wants to understand." I didn't hug her back. I kept my bag close, heavy with documents and memory. My father stood near the fireplace, pretending authority still lived in his voice. "We raised you better than this," he began. Pastor Raymond nodded solemnly. "Honor thy father and mother," he said. "It's a commandment, not a suggestion." The words slid off me like rain on glass. I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. "If we're talking about honor," I said, "let's start with truth." Paper by paper, I laid everything out. The will my grandfather wrote. The bank receipt. The business contract. The receipts for my brother's truck, bought the week the company collapsed. Every signature, every date, every lie dressed as family duty. The room grew silent. No one looked at me now. They stared at the papers as if they burned. That money was for my education, I said evenly. My future, not a family investment. My aunt dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. People make mistakes, she whispered. Yes, I replied. And people live with them. I turned to my father. When you told me the business would save us, you meant it would save you. He said nothing. My mother's lips trembled, her voice small. We were desperate. So was I said. I worked 3 jobs while you remodeled the kitchen. My brother looked away. The guilt on his face came too late to matter. You taught me that family means sacrifice, I continued. I just learned to choose who deserves mine. I gathered the documents slowly, each one folded with precision. They had ambushed me once in this house. Now the stage was mine. I turned toward the hallway, the one leading to my grandfather's study. The scent of old books and dust still lingered. He had carved his initials into the desk himself. I stood behind it and faced them. You can stay here, I said. As tenants. The words dropped like stones. Fair rent. First and last month due immediately. No exceptions. My father's voice cracked. You'd make us pay to live in our own home. Yes. No hesitation, no apology. He looked at me then, not as a daughter, but as something unrecognizable. Maybe that was fair. Because the girl they once knew had died with that inheritance check. The woman before them now was something new. Not angry. Not vindictive. Just done pretending. I handed Naomi the contract to finalize. 15 years of silence, condensed into ink and paper. They had built their comfort on my sacrifice. Now they would live within its terms. Justice, signed at last, with shaking hands on the other side of the table. 6 months later, the house no longer looked like a battlefield. Fresh paint covered the scars along the porch rails. The hydrangeas bloomed again beside the steps. Every weekend, I replaced what years of neglect had taken. The floors shone the way they did when my grandfather walked them. Inside, silence had changed its tone. It was no longer heavy. It was earned. My father worked at the hardware store now. He greeted me with a nod when I arrived each month to collect rent. No excuses. No shouting. Just quiet compliance. My mother found a job at the pharmacy. Sometimes she baked apple cobbler, her way of offering peace. We spoke little, but her eyes no longer begged. Jason worked 2 jobs, the swagger gone from his shoulders. He arrived late for dinner, but always showed up. The first time he handed me rent in person, his hands didn't shake. He just said, "Thanks for letting us stay." And for once, I believed him. The dining table, our old battleground, held family meals again. Conversations small, ordinary, safe. No one mentioned the past. Maybe that was our truest apology. I spent my evenings in my grandfather's study. The scent of pipe tobacco and old paper lingered like memory. His books lined the walls, alphabetized the way he taught me. On the desk sat a single photograph, him teaching me to balance ledgers. The numbers never lie, he used to say. Remember that. Now I understood what he meant. The math of love and responsibility always finds its balance. Some debts are paid in money, others in change. I created a scholarship in his name, the Walter Ward Foundation, for students who lost financial support but refused to quit. 3 young women received aid that first year. Each one reminded me of the girl I used to be. Tired, determined, unbreakable. When the town learned about the fund, the gossip quieted. Neighbors who once called me cold began to nod in respect. Mrs. Collins from next door said, "Your grandfather would be proud." Maybe he would. Maybe this was how healing looked when revenge was done right. Not destruction, but rebuilding. Not victory, but order. On Sunday evenings, I sat on the porch swing as dusk settled. The air smelled like magnolia and old wood. Inside, my family moved through the house carefully, respectfully. We had all learned boundaries the hard way. The house no longer belonged to ghosts. It belonged to accountability. One night, I found an old note in my grandfather's handwriting. True inheritance isn't what you're given, but what you do with what's taken. I framed it above his desk. Every time I passed by, I read it again. It was more than a quote. It was a compass. Outside, the streetlights flickered on one by one. Different houses, different stories. But one truth stayed the same. We all rebuild from what breaks us, if we choose to. And I had chosen well. Evening settles softly over the house. The porch light hums, steady and warm. I sit on the old swing, the chains creaking like an echo of memory. The air tastes like autumn, crisp and forgiving. Inside, laughter rises from the kitchen, low, fragile, real. It no longer sounds like guilt. It sounds like beginning. I look at the window, where I once stood begging to be believed. Now the reflection stares back, calm and certain. The girl who wanted approval is gone. The woman who remains needs none. Justice came quietly, disguised as responsibility. It rebuilt what revenge would have ruined. The house breathes again, each wall lighter with truth. Forgiveness was never about them. It was about me walking forward without their shadows. The porch swing rocks slower as the sky darkens. Some debts can't be repaid, only understood. Some pain doesn't fade, it transforms. I whisper my grandfather's words one last time. True inheritance isn't what you're given, but what you create after loss. The wind carries it away, gentle, final. And for the first time, peace feels permanent.